Would the medical students kind of dread if there's this examination out there already? Because if I'm a medical student, the one thing in my head is I'm already slogging and I'm already trying to get my medical degree, and then when I come out of it, I still have to do another examination to get into that. Do you think that will kind of make students try not to practice in Malaysia and go overseas and things like that?
No, I don't think so. For a couple of reasons. Home is home and home is beautiful. Okay. So we'll leave that. Secondly, oftentimes there are very few Malaysian qualifications that allow you to automatically work overseas. Let's talk about Singapore, for example. A source of it's a source of brain gain for them and drain for us. There are only 2 universities in Malaysia where you can automatically practice in Singapore, and that's Malaya, University Malaya and University Kebangsaan Malaysia. The other 31 universities in Malaysia can't automatically go to Singapore to practice. And assuming they want to practice in Australia with a Malaysian qualification, for example, they will still need to sit for the Australian entry examination. I think it's called the AMC. So that equalizes the playing field for a lot of people and also discourages them to practice overseas.
Do you think that this whole issue is also a form of maybe the structure put in place or the laws put in place, or how we try to bring in more medical schools? Was it a mix of all of those issues? And what do you think would be the few things that you would think that needs to happen in these few years so that we don't have medical doctors working as Grab drivers?
Well, fortunately for our young friend, his Grab experience would have been a limited one, and hopefully he's already in service. In the ideal situation, we'll have a good number of doctors. And when I say good, I hesitate to put a number on it because there are technocrats, I would even use the word bureaucrats, technocrats within the Ministry of Health who I think are fantastic at this job. There are tools available for them. For example, the World Health Organization has something called WISN, W-I-S-N, workload indicator for staffing needs. And they can plan. They, as in the Ministry of Health, does have a plan, I believe, that sketches out how many doctors that we need, right? So maybe the first step is for us to publicize that plan. So when I say publicize, it means the government should let the people know. This is a projected number of doctors that we need for a population of that size, for a disease profile of this much, and with a health financing that we have, and so on and so forth. And that way we can be a little clearer about how many doctors we actually need per year, for example, taking into account those who's going to retire, diversify into other professions and so on. So I think some transparency of information will be helpful. The second one is actually to control the number of medical schools. The moratorium, for example, that ends in 2021 could be extended. As I think about policy, Dishen, there's always a spectrum. It depends on the political appetite of a country. So I will share with you some other thoughts, and they just go progressively along the spectrum of political appetite. You can extend the moratorium. You can encourage the merger of local medical schools. And when I say merger, we have 33. We don't have enough specialists to train the medical students. We don't have enough lecturers to train the medical students. Often, the private schools have to purchase or buy or borrow services from the Ministry of Health specialists. I think it's great, but we need to be a bit more concerted about this. We're a small country. 32 million people isn't a lot of people. And do we really need that many medical schools? I'm not advocating closure. I think markets will take care of that. But perhaps some consideration for mergers. And then if we move along the spectrum a little bit more, is to say, what if there's medical schools that are failing? And however you define failing, failing could be that they can't meet their lecturer to student ratios. They have no, and some schools can't. And some schools don't have a teaching hospital. Some schools have to rely a lot of adjunct lecturers. And some schools graduate house officers who get extended repeatedly and they never complete, or they drop out of postings and so on. The statistics are all available to, for example, the Malaysian Medical Council or the Ministry of Health. Maybe for these schools, we should ask them to buck up. We should audit them more aggressively. We should perhaps even close them down. If it's within the law that you have a lecturer-student ratio and you're not meeting it, to me that seems like grounds to closure.
Because I feel like you have been a student, I have been a student. If you don't have enough lecturers, that's a big warning sign. And shouldn't we kind of start looking at these schools and saying that do they really have enough resources to actually produce quality graduates.
That's very true. Let me build on that a little bit and go a bit along the continuum, right? We've talked about moratorium, merger of medical schools, now closure. Obviously, we're not going to close everyone, and market forces will help, and we need to be mindful about quality. I'll put it to you, Dishen, that health is something that we can't compromise on. I think profits are important, and we should be profitable in the adventures and the ventures that we have, and I think that's all great. But profit at the cost of perhaps some health systems needs or the lives of somebody else, I think is something that is a bridge too far for us to cross. And let's go 2 more steps along the continuum to moderate the number of medical students. Perhaps it's a Ministry of Health and society, so it's not only a Ministry of Health responsibility, I think all of society is also involved. We're more aware of doctors and the importance of doctors. Doctors are important, no doubt. You know, I'm one myself. There could be other professions that are equally important. That you could have a medical degree and off you go to do health policy, and off you go to do health economics, and off you go to do health informatics, for example. Off you go to become a social entrepreneur, to work in NGOs. There is this huge range of activities and jobs that you can have short of clinical practice. And maybe one final idea is to absorb the oversupply of young doctors as well. We're putting a lot of them into hospital-based practice, which is important. We're forgetting to put them into primary and secondary care. So what I mean by primary care is they're not seeing the hypertensions and the diabetes, people with hypertension and diabetes on a long-term basis, and instead they're only seeing those in critical care conditions in the ICU, for example, which is not representative of daily life.
Okay, so if doctors and do you think that based on everything that you have said, all the type of steps that they can take, do you think that this problem can be solved, or is something that it will take a very, very long time for us to even handle?
I think let's assume the problem is oversupply.
Okay.
It is temporary and it can be solved. Over time, when you have some policies that allow the market forces to dictate and allow society to have their own choices being respected, I think it can moderate itself over time. But I caution against any short-term solutions. Oversupply is just one component of a health system, and indeed it's a good problem to have, better than having too few doctors, right? We haven't spoken about quality and distribution and the division between public-private, urban, rural, primary, secondary, tertiary as well, right?
We won't have enough time to discuss all of it.
Probably not. It's a temporary problem, it can be solved.
All right, very interesting conversation. Thank you so much, Dr. Khor, for your time. I hope that this discussion or this conversation starts people to actually talk about, and actually, I think maybe we're giving them maybe an insight on what the oversupply doctors issue is and how we can actually take steps to solve it. Not a temporary solution, but something long-term and things like that. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Khor.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching. This has been Health Matters with me, Dishen Kumar. I hope you loved the conversation. I enjoyed myself talking about an issue in Malaysia which we don't really know about, and in Health Matters, that's what we try to bring you. So please join me in the next episode. This is Health Matters with me, Dishen Kumar. Thank you. Goodbye.